Are you ready to learn the truth about how the most luxurious homes of the 19th century functioned? Behind the grand facades of magnificent palaces lay a vast and complex mechanism. And this living mechanism operated solely on the back of the exhausting manual labor of the household staff. To those around them, the lives of wealthy owners seemed incredibly easy, elegant, and completely carefree. But this ideal image was created solely through the titanic efforts of dozens of completely invisible people. Servants woke up long before dawn and went to bed late at night, ensuring the impeccable comfort of their masters. It is important to understand that in those days, these vast residences lacked the modern conveniences we are accustomed to today. These grand buildings had no central heating, no hot water supply, and certainly no electricity. Every drop of water for morning ablutions, bathing, and laundry had to be carried up steep staircases by hand. Similarly, servants hauled heavy metal buckets of dirty coal every day to stoke the numerous fireplaces. In the evenings, hundreds of candles and kerosene lamps had to be lit, and early in the morning, they had to be thoroughly cleaned of the accumulated soot. This continuous cycle of hard physical labor never stopped for a single day of the year. Inside each such house, there was a very strict hierarchy of workers with its own rigid rules. From the head butler to the youngest dishwasher in the kitchen, everyone knew their duties clearly. The main rule for the household staff was to remain completely invisible and inaudible to the noble owners of the house. They moved exclusively through narrow, hidden corridors and special back staircases so as not to spoil the aesthetic of the festivities. Their monotonous labor can safely be called a true daily test of human endurance. Watch the video to the end, and you'll learn how an invisible army of workers performed a true feat every day to keep a Victorian mansion running. What lies behind the beautiful facade of the grand halls will completely change your understanding of luxury. The architecture of the Victorian mansion was originally designed with a strict separation of spaces in mind. The house had two completely independent systems of corridors and staircases. The formal halls were intended exclusively for the owners and their distinguished guests. The service quarters were arranged so that the staff could move about the house completely unnoticed. Hidden doors blended into the wallpaper or wood paneling in the main corridors. Behind these inconspicuous entrances were narrow, steep staircases with no natural light. Servants would climb these stairs long before the homeowners awoke. The morning ritual began in the complete darkness of the basement levels. That is where the servants' quarters, kitchens, and pantries were located. The maids woke up around 5 o'clock in the morning every day. Their first task was to open the heavy wooden shutters on the first-floor windows. This was followed by a thorough sweeping of the carpets in the living rooms and libraries. It was important to finish all the dusty work before the owners came down for breakfast. Cleaning was carried out in complete silence, so as not to disturb the sleep of the mansion's residents. Wet tea leaves were used to clean the expensive Persian carpets. They were scattered over the pile, collecting the tiniest particles of dirt and dust. Then the maids carefully swept up the tea leaves with stiff brushes. This labor-intensive process helped preserve the vibrancy of the colors and prevent dust from being stirred up into the air. Cleaning a single large rug took up to several hours of continuous work. Polishing the furniture required special beeswax-based compounds. The workers rubbed the wooden surfaces to a mirror-like shine using soft flannel cloths. Special attention was paid to the carved elements on the legs of chairs and massive tables. Every detail of the interior was meant to reflect the morning sun. This created the illusion of absolute perfection and constant newness in all objects. While some maids tended to the living rooms, others tidied up the grand staircases. The wooden banisters were polished with special oils every day. The brass rods holding the carpet runners on the steps were rubbed until they shone dazzlingly. This process required physical strength and incredible patience. All this work remained completely invisible to the mansion's owners. Brass doorknobs and nameplates also required daily care. They were cleaned with special polishes that removed tarnish from fingerprints. The maids used old newspapers and soft cloths to achieve a perfect finish. Every door in the house had to open without the slightest squeak. To ensure this, the hinges were regularly lubricated with a special oil. Windows were washed using vinegar water and old linen rags. The huge panoramic windows had to remain crystal clear in any weather. Maids climbed tall ladders to reach the very top panes. This task took up a significant portion of the morning. Sunlight streamed into the rooms, unobstructed by a single speck of dust. The floral arrangements in the mansion were also part of the staff's morning duties. Senior maids cut fresh flowers from the greenhouses and created elaborate arrangements. Huge bouquets were placed in the halls, living rooms, and dining rooms. The water in the vases was changed daily to keep the flowers fresh. This added a subtle fragrance and a festive atmosphere to the house. This entire complex system of morning preparations ran like clockwork. Every employee knew exactly their section and their duties. No one crossed paths with the owners, creating the illusion of a self-cleaning space. It would be very interesting to hear your thoughts on such arduous morning work. Write about it in the comments and be sure to subscribe to our channel. Are you ready for the shocking truth about how those massive stone palaces were heated? In winter, Victorian mansions turned into veritable ice caves due to their size. High ceilings and huge windows made it impossible to retain heat inside the rooms. The only source of heat was the fireplaces located in practically every room. Maintaining these fireplaces required tremendous physical effort and constant attention. A stoker's workday began long before dawn. He had to clear dozens of fireplaces of the ash that had accumulated overnight. The cooled ashes were carefully collected into metal buckets with lids. This work was dirty and required great care. The slightest careless movement could cause a cloud of black soot to fill the luxurious bedroom. After cleaning the fireboxes, the process of loading new fuel began. Dry kindling and rolled-up old newspapers were used to start the fire. High-quality oak firewood or pieces of coal were placed on top. Lighting the fireplace so that it didn't smoke into the room was considered a true art. The draft in the tall chimneys often depended on the weather conditions outside. Carrying coal was one of the most physically demanding tasks in the house. The fuel was stored in deep cellars, where it was delivered by huge carts. Workers had to fill heavy copper buckets and carry them up to the upper floors. Hundreds of kilograms of coal were hauled up narrow service staircases every day. This process continued without pause throughout the entire cold season. In the formal reception rooms, the fire had to burn constantly. This required regularly adding firewood and monitoring the intensity of the flames. Special screens protected the carpets and furniture from accidentally flying sparks. Tongs, pokers, and shovels made of polished brass were always at the ready. Maintaining the perfect fire created an atmosphere of comfort and prosperity in the main rooms of the mansion. The owners' bedrooms were heated several hours before they woke up. Maids would slip silently into the rooms to light the fire. The owners were to wake up in a comfortable and warm environment. By evening, the procedure was repeated to prepare the bedrooms for sleep. Warm copper hot water bottles were also placed between the sheets for added comfort. Chimneys were cleaned regularly to prevent fires. This task was entrusted to specialized workers with the necessary skills. They used long brushes and scrapers to remove thick layers of soot. The accumulation of soot could lead to a fire inside the brickwork. The safety of the entire massive building depended on the quality of this unseen work. Kitchen stoves required a completely different approach to heating. Huge cast iron stoves consumed enormous amounts of firewood and coal. They had to maintain a stable temperature for continuous cooking. Stove tenders worked in the kitchen around the clock, providing the cooks with the necessary heat. Allowing the kitchen stove to go out was considered a serious offense and disrupted the entire schedule of the house. The fireplace heating system left its mark on every surface in the house. Despite all efforts, fine coal dust settled on the furniture and fabrics. This created a vicious cycle of constant cleaning and dusting. Maids tirelessly battled the consequences of dozens of fireplaces. The mansion demanded endless labor simply to remain livable. Every warm room was the result of hard physical labor. The luxury of sitting by the fireplace was made possible by the hidden efforts of unseen servants. In the next chapter, you'll learn how they coped with the need to light vast spaces as darkness fell. For now, answer one question. Could you carry dozens of kilograms of coal up steep stairs every day? I will reveal the best-kept secret of the evening radiance of Victorian balls. Before the advent of electricity, lighting a large mansion was an extremely complex engineering and logistical challenge. Daylight streamed through the windows, but as dusk fell, the house was plunged into darkness. Thousands of candles and oil lamps were used to combat the darkness. Caring for these light sources took up a significant portion of the staff's working hours. The mansion shone in the evenings only thanks to painstaking daily labor. Every morning began with the collection of all the lamps from the living quarters. Servants carried candlesticks and oil lamps to special utility rooms. There, they were thoroughly cleaned and prepared for the coming evening. Candle stubs were carefully removed from the silver candelabra. Melted wax was removed from the metal surfaces using hot water. Preparing the oil lamps required special care and precision. The glass bulbs became coated with a layer of soot during their evening use. Workers washed the fragile glass in soapy water and polished it to a shine. Cotton wicks needed to be trimmed daily to ensure even, smokeless burning. An unevenly trimmed wick could ruin the entire evening with the smell of burning. Refilling the lamps with fuel was done strictly during the daytime. The reservoirs were filled with expensive whale or vegetable oil. This process required care to avoid spilling the liquid on the floor. Accidentally spilled oil left stubborn stains on wooden surfaces. After refilling, the lamp's exterior parts were carefully wiped down with a dry cloth. Candles for the formal halls were made from high-quality beeswax. They burned evenly and for a long time, exuding a pleasant honey scent. Cheap tallow candles were used exclusively in servants' quarters. They produced a lot of soot and emitted a sharp, unpleasant odor when burning. Saving on lighting in service areas was common practice at the time. As dusk fell, the complex process of lighting the candles began. Footmen armed themselves with special long rods with a smoldering wick at the end. They methodically made their way through all the formal rooms, lighting the candelabras and chandeliers. In the vast ballrooms, the process of lighting hundreds of candles took over an hour. The crystal pendants of the chandeliers reflected the flames many times over, creating an incredible radiance. Maintaining the lighting during receptions required constant supervision. The footmen made sure the candles did not burn down too quickly. Using special tongs, they regularly removed soot from the burning wicks. Extinguished candles were immediately replaced with new ones so as not to disrupt the overall harmony of the lighting. This work was carried out silently and completely unnoticed by the guests. Mirrors played a crucial role in amplifying the light in the rooms. Candelabras were often placed directly in front of large wall mirrors. Polished silver trays also reflected the candlelight, enhancing the overall effect. Perfectly clean surfaces were essential for maximum reflection of the rays. Maids polished all reflective objects daily to create this evening magic. With the advent of gas lighting, the servants' work changed slightly, but it did not become any easier. Gas horns required regular pipe cleaning and valve checks. A gas leak posed a tremendous danger to the entire wooden mansion. The staff had to carefully monitor the condition of every light fixture. The smell of gas often seeped into the rooms, requiring constant ventilation. The evening beauty of a Victorian home was a fragile illusion, woven from wax and oil. It existed solely thanks to the invisible staff. Every lit candelabra embodied hours of painstaking handiwork. This labor made it possible to host lavish balls and formal dinners. If you were impressed by this daily, painstaking work, please like this video. Guess how long it took just to fill a single bathtub on the second floor? The lack of a central water supply made hygiene one of the most labor-intensive tasks. Water for the enormous house came from wells or nearby rivers. It was pumped by hand into large reservoirs on the lower floors. From there, the water was distributed throughout the building solely by the staff. Every liter of water was carried up the stairs in heavy metal jugs. Each bedroom had a massive wooden washstand. On it stood a porcelain jug, a large basin, and a soap dish. Maids filled these jugs with clean, cool water twice a day. Used water was drained into special buckets, which were then carried downstairs. This constant cycle of water never stopped for a single day. Supplying hot water required even greater coordination. Huge copper kettles of water were constantly boiling in the kitchen. Maids lined up to fill their tall jugs with boiling water. They then quickly carried the heavy load up to the upper floors, trying not to spill the contents. The masters were to receive scalding hot water for washing. Taking a bath in the Victorian era was considered a major event. A portable tin tub was set up right in the bedroom in front of a lit fireplace. Dozens of buckets of both hot and cold water were needed to fill it. Servants shuttled back and forth between the kitchen and the bedroom for an hour. After the bath was finished, all that water had to be scooped out and carried away. This procedure completely tied up several people for a long time. Washing and cleaning required enormous amounts of service water. Junior maids carried heavy wooden buckets from the pump in the courtyard to the laundry room. The water was first filtered through several layers of thick cloth to remove sand. It was then heated in huge brick ovens with built-in boilers. The physical strain on these workers was simply incredible. Special attention was paid to the drinking water for the mansion's owners. It was drawn from the purest springs and carefully protected from contamination. Drinking water was stored in cool cellars in sealed ceramic jugs. It was served at the tables in crystal decanters with ice, which was brought from the special ice houses. The quality of the water was strictly monitored by the mansion's senior staff. Caring for indoor plants and the greenhouse also required constant watering. Gardeners and their assistants carried water in heavy metal watering cans. The large palm trees and ferns in the grand halls needed their soil moistened daily. Water for watering was often left to stand in barrels to reach the desired temperature. This unseen labor ensured the winter gardens remained in constant bloom. The entire water supply system relied on the endurance of young women and men. They developed calluses from the heavy handles of the metal buckets. Wooden yokes made it slightly easier to carry 2 buckets at once. However, climbing the narrow service staircases remained an incredibly difficult task. The constant dampness in the utility rooms was an integral part of their lives. Even rainwater was collected and used for household purposes. Special gutters directed the flow from the roofs into spacious oak barrels. Soft rainwater was considered ideal for washing delicate lace and silk. It lathered better with soap and left no harsh residue on the fabrics. This helped conserve the purified water from the mansion's main wells. The water cycle in the house was a model of perfect logistics and hard labor. Every drop was carried by the hands of unseen workers. This constant flow ensured comfort and cleanliness on every floor of the building. In the next chapter, you'll learn how they handled large-scale culinary tasks. For now, answer this question. How many liters of water did a single maid carry each day? The kitchen of a Victorian mansion was a separate, highly organized enterprise. It was always located in the basement or a remote wing of the building. This was done to prevent cooking odors from entering the formal rooms. The kitchen area consisted of numerous specialized rooms and pantries. This entire culinary operation was run under the strict supervision of the head chef. In the center of the main kitchen stood a massive cast iron stove. It combined cooking surfaces, ovens, and water heating vessels. This stove consumed an incredible amount of coal and burned around the clock. The temperature in the room always remained unbearably high, especially during the winter months. The cooks worked in conditions of constant heat and high humidity. The junior kitchen staff performed the heaviest and most monotonous work. Dishwashers spent their days standing over huge wooden troughs of hot water. They scrubbed hundreds of plates, pots, and pans with stiff brushes. Copperware required special cleaning using coarse sand and lemon juice. Every pot had to shine like a mirror on the wooden shelves. The pantries were strictly divided according to the types of food stored in them. Meat and dairy products were kept in cool rooms with stone floors. Dry pantries were reserved for flour, sugar, grains, and expensive spices. The housekeeper was responsible for the safety of the supplies and carefully guarded the keys to all the doors. Food was purchased in bulk and delivered through a separate service entrance. The cooking process began early in the morning with the baking of fresh bread. Bakers kneaded a huge amount of dough by hand in deep wooden tubs. For breakfast, hot rolls, toast, and a variety of pastries were served. Then the preparation of elaborate dishes for lunch and the evening dinner party began. Chopping vegetables and peeling potatoes took hours of painstaking work by the assistants. Large households often employed French chefs who established their own rules. They introduced complex recipes and demanded perfect discipline from their subordinates. Preparing a single sauce could take half a day and require a multitude of ingredients. The kitchen operated like a well-coordinated orchestra, where everyone knew their part. Mistakes in preparing meals for the hosts were not forgiven and were strictly punished. Keeping food fresh without refrigerators was a true science. Ice houses filled with huge blocks of winter ice helped cool the meat. Many foods were salted, pickled, or preserved in glass jars. Hams were smoked in special rooms over slowly smoldering sawdust. These methods ensured a varied diet throughout the year. Special attention was paid to the preparation of desserts and sweet dishes. In the pastry room, true works of art were created from sugar and chocolate. Metal molds placed on crushed ice were used to set jellies and creams. Baking cakes required strict adherence to the temperature regime in wood-fired ovens. Sweets were decorated with candied violets and rose petals from the greenhouse. Ready-to-serve meals were delivered to the dining hall via a complex system of corridors. The dishes were placed in sealed metal containers to keep them warm. Servants quickly carried them to special elevators that transported the food upstairs. Speed was critical to ensure the sauces didn't get cold. On the upper floors, footmen took over to arrange the food beautifully. The kitchen finished its work late at night when the whole house fell silent. After dinner, the long process of cleaning and preparing for the new day began. The floors were scrubbed with stiff brushes, and the table surfaces were polished spotless. The stove was cleaned of soot and prepared for the morning fire. The kitchen empire came to a standstill for only a few short hours before dawn. A secret passed down from generation to generation among British butlers conceals the true complexity of serving meals. The dining room was the stage on which the main spectacle of evening life unfolded. Preparations for a dinner party began many hours before the first guests arrived. A long table was covered with a snow-white tablecloth made of the finest Irish linen. The fabric was ironed with special heavy irons directly on the table to avoid wrinkles. The perfectly smooth surface served as a canvas for the subsequent setting. The arrangement of the cutlery required geometric precision and a perfect eye for proportion. The distance between plates and chairs was measured with a special ruler. Forks, knives, and spoons made of heavy silverware were arranged in strict order. Each dish had its own specific set of cutlery, creating a complex composition. The polished silver sparkled in the candlelight, reflecting the status of the home's owners. Crystal glasses were arranged by size, forming even diagonal lines. Each guest received up to 5 different glasses for various types of beverages. The glass was first polished with linen napkins until it was perfectly clear. The slightest fingerprint on the crystal was considered a gross error on the part of the footman. The butler checked the glasses for flawless cleanliness just before dinner began. The center of the table was adorned with massive silver candelabras and vases. Floral arrangements were designed so as not to obstruct the view of fellow diners. The scent of the flowers was not to overpower the aroma of the exquisite French dishes. Place cards with the guests' names were written in perfect calligraphic handwriting. All this beauty created an atmosphere of exceptional luxury and solemnity. Meals were served according to the strict rules of the so-called Russian style. The food was carved in the kitchen and served to guests on large silver trays. The footman approached each guest from the left, offering them a portion. This process required physical strength, as the trays of food were incredibly heavy. The servants held them with one hand, maintaining a perfectly straight posture. The service took place in complete silence, like a complex synchronized dance. The footmen communicated with one another exclusively through glances and slight nods. They had to anticipate the guests' wishes, refilling glasses before they were empty. The sound of clinking plates or the clatter of cutlery was considered an unacceptable failure. Discretion and efficiency were the chief virtues of good service staff. The changing of courses took place in a flash at an unobtrusive signal from the head butler. Dirty plates were carefully removed from the right side and carried behind a screen. There, they were loaded into the kitchen elevator and sent down to the dishwashers. At the same time, clean cutlery was served to the table for the next course. This continuous cycle continued throughout the several hours of the dinner. The footmen's uniforms were no less luxurious than the guests' own attire. They wore embroidered liveries, powdered wigs, and snow-white cotton gloves. Their shoes were custom-made and had soft soles for silent movement. Gloves were changed several times throughout the evening to remain impeccably clean at all times. The servant's appearance underscored the wealth and high standing of the aristocratic family. Once the guests had moved into the parlor, the cleanup of the dining room began. The table was quickly cleared of food scraps, dishes, and crumpled napkins. The tablecloth was neatly folded and the chairs were returned to their places. Crumbs were swept from the expensive carpets with special silver brushes. The room had to look impeccably clean by the next morning. The art of table setting was one of the most difficult disciplines in the mansion. The footmen trained in this craft for years, honing every movement until it became second nature. Their work made the evening receptions truly unforgettable for the distinguished guests. In the next chapter, you'll learn how they managed the endless laundry. For now, answer this question: how difficult was it to serve dishes silently with one hand? The laundry room was the dampest and noisiest place in a Victorian mansion. This separate building or wing was filled with steam and the smell of lye. The washing process took several days and required enormous physical effort. Laundresses were responsible for keeping the textiles clean, and their work was considered one of the most grueling. A huge amount of clothing and linens arrived here every day. The laundry process began with sorting the items by fabric type and degree of soiling. Coarse cotton sheets were separated from delicate silk blouses and lace. The laundry was then soaked in large wooden tubs filled with warm soapy water. Stubborn stains were pre-treated by rubbing them with pieces of hard laundry soap. This step helped soften the dirt before the main stage of boiling the fabrics. The main washing took place in huge copper cauldrons built into brick ovens. The laundry was boiled in bubbling water for several hours at a time. The washerwomen constantly stirred the heavy wet fabric with long wooden sticks. Steam filled the room, making the air heavy and difficult to breathe. Removing the wet laundry from the boiling water required dexterity and great strength. After boiling, the next step was thorough rinsing in clean cold water. The fabrics were transferred from trough to trough until all the soapy suds had disappeared. Special hand-cranked mechanical rollers were used for wringing. Two laundresses turned the handles of a heavy press, passing the fabric between wooden cylinders. This device helped remove excess moisture, but the process remained very slow. Drying the laundry depended on the unpredictable weather conditions of the English climate. On clear days, clotheslines were strung up outside, and the fabric dried in the fresh breeze. Rainy weather forced them to hang sheets on special racks near the stoves. Drying in winter was a real challenge due to the high humidity indoors. Often, the laundry was finished drying right in the ironing rooms in front of the fireplaces. The ironing room was a separate, warm room with large tables. Cast iron irons were heated directly on the red-hot surface of a special stove. Laundry workers constantly replaced cooled-down irons with hot ones to keep the process going. A single iron could weigh several kilograms, which was very tiring on the hands. Small, specially shaped irons were used for ironing delicate lace. The process of starching collars and cuffs was considered a separate art form. The starch was cooked according to special recipes to achieve the perfect consistency. Men's shirts were expected to maintain a stiff shape and shine in the light. Incorrectly mixed starch could irreparably ruin an expensive garment. After treatment, the fabric was polished with special irons featuring rounded edges. The care of men's suits and outerwear was entrusted to valets. Heavy woolen fabrics were not washed but subjected to thorough cleaning with brushes. Stains were removed using ammonia or special stain removers. Clothing was regularly aired out outdoors to eliminate the smells of tobacco and smoke. Trousers were placed in special presses to maintain their perfect creases. Women's ball gowns consisted of dozens of meters of delicate silk fabrics. They also could not be washed in boiling water so as not to ruin their shape. Maids carefully steamed the folds of the dresses using hot irons through a damp cloth. Underskirts with ruffles were washed separately and took a long time to tidy up. All clothing was stored in spacious cedar wardrobes that protected the fabrics from moisture and dampness. The laundry operated non-stop to maintain the status of a perfect home. Clean linens were a sign of wealth and the high level of organization in the mansion. The laundress's labor remained unseen, but its results were highly valued by the owners. Mountains of fresh towels and snow-white tablecloths were sent upstairs daily. This endless cycle of cleanliness was the foundation of comfort in the Victorian era. The battle against dirt in the mansion resembled an endless military campaign. The main enemy was soot, which billowed out daily from dozens of working fireplaces. The finest coal dust settled on books, paintings, and expensive furniture upholstery. If not removed daily, these items quickly lost their luxurious appearance. Cleaning became a routine that took up most of the maid's time. Libraries required a particularly careful approach to the dusting process. The leather bindings of antique books were wiped with dry, soft flannel cloths. The use of water was strictly prohibited here due to the risk of damaging the pages. Each book was removed from the cabinet, cleaned, and carefully returned to its place. The high shelves forced the maids to use wooden stepladders and long feather dusters. Caring for picture frames and mirrors also had its own strict rules. The gilded carvings on the frames were very fragile and easily worn away by rough friction. Dust was removed with light, sweeping motions using special brushes. Large mirrored surfaces were wiped down with alcohol solutions to achieve a perfect shine. All this work required precision and incredible patience on the part of the staff. Upholstered furniture with velvet coverings needed to be dusted regularly. Sofas and armchairs were covered with damp sheets before work began. Then the servants beat the furniture with light cane carpet beaters. The damp cloth absorbed the rising dust, preventing it from scattering throughout the room. This method protected the expensive silk wallpaper from getting dirty during cleaning. Silverware and decorative items were polished every week. The pantries held hundreds of silver items of various sizes and purposes. The footmen used special polishing pastes made from a mixture of chalk and alcohol. They rubbed the metal until it shone like a mirror, removing any traces of tarnish. The clean silver was the pride of the house and a subject of special care for the butler. Caring for the parquet floors was another physically demanding task. The wooden panels were rubbed with wax-based polishes for protection and shine. Servants crawled on their knees, rubbing the wax into the wood with stiff brushes. The floors were then polished with heavy woolen cloths until perfectly smooth. Walking on such a floor was difficult due to its incredible slipperiness. Crystal chandeliers were cleaned several times a year during general cleanings. Each glass pendant was removed from the metal frame for thorough washing. The pieces were immersed in soapy water and then rinsed in clean water. The crystal was dried using lint-free linen towels. Reassembling the chandelier took several hours and required the utmost concentration. The carpets on the grand staircases were cleaned daily with stiff brushes. Maids swept dust from each step, moving from top to bottom. The brass carpet holders were polished separately using polish. This created a grand appearance for guests ascending to the upper floors. The impeccable cleanliness of the staircases underscored the mansion's overall high standard. Wet cleaning of the wooden wall panels was performed very rarely. The wood was wiped only with a slightly damp cloth so as not to damage the varnish. Great attention was paid to the corners and baseboards, where most of the dirt accumulated. Small brushes helped remove dust from the deep carvings on the wooden decorations. Preserving the historic interior was the main task of the entire staff. Endless cleaning and polishing created the illusion of time standing still. The mansion seemed perpetually new, despite its decades of existence. The staff's labor erased traces of use and wear from every object. This Sisyphean task was the inevitable price of living in such luxurious surroundings. Dirt was conquered only thanks to an army of tireless workers with brushes. The world of the servants was strictly organized like a small state. Within the service quarters, there was a rigid system of subordination and obedience. At the top of this social pyramid were the butler and the housekeeper. They held absolute authority over all other service staff. Their orders were not to be questioned and were carried out with incredible speed and precision. The butler was responsible for the wine cellar, the silverware, and the work of all the male servants. He personally served the head of the family and the most important guests during dinners. His appearance was always impeccable, and his manners were marked by restrained dignity. This man was the keeper of the aristocratic family's most intimate secrets. The butler's salary allowed him to lead a quite comfortable lifestyle. The housekeeper managed the female servants and all household supplies. The bunch of keys on her belt symbolized her unlimited authority over the pantries. She oversaw the cleanliness of the linens, the quality of the housekeeping, and the behavior of the young maids. This position was usually held by middle-aged, unmarried women with extensive experience. Her stern gaze made any kitchen assistant tremble. Personal valets and ladies-in-waiting held a special, privileged position. They were in constant close contact with their influential masters. Their duties included assisting with dressing, caring for the wardrobe, and styling hair. They often became trusted confidants entrusted with delicate tasks. These servants were exempt from the heavy physical labor of cleaning the mansion. The servants' hall was a place where the hierarchy was fully evident. Staff dinners were held at a long table according to strict rules of etiquette. The butler and housekeeper sat at the head of the table in the best chairs. Senior servants were served first, receiving the best cuts of meat from the kitchen. Junior staff sat at the far end of the table and spoke only in whispers. Footmen were valued not only for their hard work, but also for their tall stature and good looks. They were hired to create a striking visual effect during formal receptions. They opened doors, escorted guests, and served at the table. A footman's luxurious livery often cost more than his entire annual salary. Competition for these positions was fierce among the young men of the time. The kitchen staff lived by their own rules under the authority of the head chef. Cooks and dishwashers were at the very bottom of the household hierarchy. They performed the dirtiest work, rarely leaving the mansion's basements. Their day consisted of endlessly peeling vegetables and washing enormous pots. Advancement to a higher position required many years of hard work. A system of fines and punishments strictly regulated the servants' behavior. Any slip-up could result in a deduction from their meager wages. A broken cup or being late was strictly noted by senior staff. Dismissal without a letter of recommendation meant the end of a career for any servant. Discipline was maintained by the fear of losing a stable job and a roof over one's head. Free time was a rare luxury in the schedules of Victorian workers. Most servants received only half a day off once every 2 weeks. They spent these rare hours attending church or writing to their families. Their entire lives belonged to the household they served faithfully. Romantic relationships among the staff were often prohibited by the mansion's rules. This complex social hierarchy ensured the smooth operation of a massive machine. Every cog knew its place and fulfilled its function to the end. Strict boundaries created the order necessary to manage a vast household. The hierarchy of servants was a mirror image of the class-based society of that historical period. The house functioned perfectly precisely because of this strict division of duties. The 20th century brought technological changes that shattered this way of life. The advent of electricity dealt the first blow to the system of a massive household staff. Electric lamps no longer required daily cleaning of the glass and trimming of the wicks. It was enough to simply flip a switch to illuminate the vast ballroom. The labor of dozens of footmen became unnecessary in a single brief historical moment. The introduction of central water supply and sewer systems changed hygiene forever. Water began to flow to the upper floors through pressurized pipes. There was no longer any need to carry heavy copper jugs of hot water up the stairs. Bathrooms became permanent fixtures, equipped with ceramic sinks and drains. Junior maids were freed from the most grueling physical labor. Steam and water heating systems replaced thousands of traditional wood-burning fireplaces. Radiators maintained a stable temperature in the rooms without constant human intervention. The profession of stoker gradually disappeared from the lists of domestic staff. Coal dust no longer settled on the furniture, which greatly simplified cleaning. The mansion no longer required round-the-clock stoking of the furnaces. Vacuum cleaners and mechanical washing machines became the maid's faithful helpers. Cleaning carpets no longer required beating them or using wet tea leaves. Electric motors took over the heaviest work in laundries. The washing process sped up several times over, requiring minimal human supervision. Cleanliness became more accessible and cheaper than ever before in history. Gas and electric stoves completely transformed basement kitchens. Cooks no longer had to tend the fire in huge cast iron ovens. Temperature control became precise and incredibly easy to understand. The advent of refrigerators solved the problem of storing perishable foods during the summer. Huge ice houses and salt cellars became mere architectural relics of the past. Social changes also contributed to a reduction in the number of domestic servants in homes. Factories and plants offered higher wages and a standard workday. Young people no longer wanted to put up with strict house rules. Working in a mansion was no longer the only way for the poor to survive. Finding qualified staff became increasingly difficult with each passing decade. Property and inheritance taxes hit aristocratic families hard. Maintaining massive estates with dozens of employees became economically unviable. Many mansions were sold, demolished, or converted for public use. The luxurious lifestyle described in novels was rapidly becoming a thing of the past. Owners moved into more compact and modern city apartments. The few houses that remained were adapted to the new technological reality. The staff was reduced from 50 people to 3 or 4 all-purpose assistants. The strict hierarchy and lavish liveries disappeared, giving way to functional uniforms. The relationship between masters and servants became more pragmatic and less formal. The great era of the invisible army of servants ended quietly and almost imperceptibly. Today we gaze upon these historic buildings with admiration. We see luxurious interiors, elegant furniture, and works of fine art. However, it is important to remember the immense effort that went into creating this splendor. Every antique item holds the memory of the calloused hands of invisible workers. Their hard labor was the foundation upon which the entire Victorian culture rested. The history of Victorian daily life is a testament to human endurance and incredible organization. Technological progress freed people from having to spend their lives polishing brass. Modern conveniences make us independent of others' daily, exhausting labor. Huge mansions have turned into museums, telling the story of a bygone era. That world has vanished forever behind the closed doors of time and technological evolution. We've explored the complex workings of a Victorian mansion and the labor of its staff. Behind every gleaming hall lay hours of hard, methodical physical labor. Please suggest topics for future videos that you'd like to see in the comments. What other hidden historical processes interest you the most? Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on new, exciting historical investigations.